Okay guys, so welcome back again. So in this video, we'll be doing a quick tutorial on Firebase Firestore with React. And I would try to keep this tutorial as simple as possible so that even the beginners can follow me. So the first thing we need to do is to create a new Firebase project. So here I am inside console.firebase.google.com. So the first thing I'm going to do is to create a new project. So let me click on add project. And here I need to give my project a name. So in case a Firebase project is a subset of the Google Cloud project. So if you want to use Firebase with any of your previous Google Cloud project, then you can select it from the drop down if you have created any previously, or otherwise you can simply create a new project. So let me simply call it YouTube tutorial. So YouTube tutorial. And now what I'll do, I'll simply click on continue, and it would take a moment or so to create this project. And for the analytics, I'm simply going to disable analytics for this project. So let's simply click on create project, and it would take a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes. So we see that our project is ready. So now let me click on continue. And now we are inside the dashboard of our Firebase project. And now what we need to do, we need to enable this project to be used on a web application because React is a web application. So I can simply click on this thing here, that is add an app to get started. So let me click on this web thing here. So let's click here. And now we need to give our app a name. So let's simply give this a name. So let's simply call it React Firestore tutorial. So tutorial, not tutorial, but tutorial. And I do not intend to enable Firebase hosting for this project. So let's simply click on register app. And now we need to, or we will be getting a snippet here that we can later get it from the project dashboard itself. So now I can simply skip on this thing. So let's simply skip on this thing, and let's simply click on continue to console because I can get this configuration file later on also. So, or what I can do, I can simply copy this piece of code inside my clipboard here. And now let's simply click on continue to console. And now we see that we have added one application to our Firebase project, and that application is the React Firestore tutorial that we just created. And now what we are going to do, we need to enable Firestore database for this project. So let's simply click here and make sure that you click on Firestore database and not on real-time database. So let's click on Firestore database. And now we need to make some security rules for this project. So let's simply click on this create database as of now. And now we see that we have two options to start this database, that is in production mode or in test mode. So if we start this database in production mode, we see that we have this thing here that is allow read write if false. That is, no one would be able to read and write to this database because it is written here if false. So if it would have been if true, then anyone would have read and write access to your database. And I would be coming to these security rules later in the video, but for now we need to start this database in test mode. And now we see that we have this thing here that is allow read write if request.time is less than timestamp.date, and it is 1 month from now. So it means that any request coming from this time onwards up till this date, anyone can have read and write access to this database. So let's start it in test mode and let it be like this only. So now let's click on next. And now we see that we need to set a location for this database. So for multi-region databases, you can only choose the US Central or the Europe West region, and that's what I'm going to do. And if you were being specific about a particular area in which you need to serve your application, then you can simply select one of the regional databases. So let me select here US Central, and now let me click on enable. And now it would take a moment or so to enable the Firestore database inside our Firebase project. So now we see that we have our Cloud Firestore ready, and we have the database thing is here. And since it's a NoSQL database, then we need to create collections inside this database. And I would be coming to that in a moment. First, let me simply cross these things here because they are not of any use. And we have the rules tab here. We have the indexes here. And we have the usage here. That is how much we have used our database in the free trial. So now let's come to the data tab here, and to create a data collection inside a NoSQL database, first you need to create a collection. So what is a collection? A collection is a group of similar records. So for example, let's say that you want to create a list of to-dos inside a to-dos collection. So what I'll do, I'll simply create a collection called to-dos. So let's simply give this collection an ID, and let me call it to-dos. like this. And now let me simply click on next. And now we need to provide an ID to this document, because in NoSQL databases, the collection contains documents, and each document is an individual row inside a table. So basically you can compare this, or you can reference this NoSQL database with SQL databases, like collections are similarly mapped to tables and documents are mapped to rows inside that table. So let me simply give this document an ID. So let's simply click here, auto ID. Though you can provide your own unique ID here, but for now I am simply going to give it a unique ID. And that is what typically most of the NoSQL databases contain, a unique identifier for this document. And now we have a field. So since we are creating a document inside a to-do collection, so let me simply call it to-do, or let me simply call it the value of the field would be title. That is the title of the to-do, and the type of this field can be anything. Of these types here. That is either the string, number, boolean, and so on and so forth. So let me simply call it a string. Let's simply give it a value of get milk. Simply like this. And now let's simply click on save. Though if you want to add another field to this document, let's simply add another field, that is completed. And the type would be boolean this time, because we don't know that whether the task is completed or not. So let's give it an initial value of false. So now let me simply click on save. And now we see that we have a collection called to-dos, and in that to-dos collection, we have this document with an ID of this thing here, that is this ID, and the fields of that document are these fields, that is the title of the to-do and the is completed. And in a similar way, what we can do, we can start another collection. So let's simply create one more collection, and this time let's simply give this collection an ID of movies. Let's click on next, and now we want to give it an auto ID. So the document ID inside the movies collection is this ID. The field would be name, that is the name of the movie, and let's call it Captain America. And I'm a Marvel fan, so I would be using this movies database inside the tutorial, that is inside the front-end React application. So let's simply click on save. Though I can add as many fields as I want to have, but that would take a lot more time in making the front-end application. But the logic would remain the same even if you have a single field or if you have multiple fields. So for the simplicity of the tutorial, I'm going to simply create only a single field inside this document, that is the movies collection. So let's call this field a name, and the value would be Captain America. And let's click on save. And now we see that inside our database, we have two collections. That is the movies collection with this document and this field, and we have a to-dos collection. So inside your database or inside your Firestore database, you can have as many collections as you want. And in that collections, you can have as many individual documents as you want. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to integrate this Firestore database to our front-end application. So before doing that, I need to get something, or we need to install a dependency inside our React project. So let's go back to our application here. So here what I've done is that I've created a very basic React application using the create React app package. And guys, if you don't know anything about React, then you can go and watch my video that is linked above, and that video would be in the description also, that is getting started with React. And now I'm going to install a dependency for this project, that is the Firebase dependency. So let me do yarn add Firebase like this, or if you were using npm, then you can simply do npm install Firebase, simply like this. And now it would take a couple of seconds or a couple of moments to install Firebase. And I personally use yarn because it is a much faster than as compared to npm, so that's why I prefer to use yarn. So now the dependency has been installed, and now what I'm going to do, I'm going to start this application in the background so that the application is also always started, and we do not need any more dependency for this project or for this tutorial. So let me simply do yarn start to start the application on localhost port 3000, and we can see that our application is running here. So let me also minimize the terminal. And now let me see that inside the package.json file, we have this dependency called Firebase. And let me increase the size here. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new folder inside the source folder called lib. And this is only my personal preference to create all the libraries I use inside the lib folder. And inside this lib folder, I'm going to create a new file called init-firebase.js. like this. And here we are using the version 9 of the Firebase API, which provides us with tree shaking, so that our final bundle size is much less as compared to the V8 API. So thus we are using the V9 API. And if we have a look at the package.json file, we have installed the V9 version here. So let's go here, and here what we need to do, we need to import something from Firebase app. So Firebase /app, and this is the first thing you need to do inside in any of your React or Next.js projects. And here we need to get this function, that is initialize app. And then what we need to do, we need to initialize our Firebase application using the Firebase config, which we copied initially. Or if you haven't copied initially, then what you can do, you can go to your application here, that is your Firebase project here, and you can simply click here, that is project overview. And then you can click on this thing here, that is this app here, and let's go to the settings here. And we see that we are inside the project settings. And then what we can do, we can simply copy this piece of code from here. So let me simply copy it from here. So let's go back, and now what I'll do, I'll simply remove this initialize app because that is already present here. So let me paste it here, and now we can remove this, which we already imported here, because that is already present here. So now what we are doing is this, that we are simply importing initialize app from the Firebase app package, and then we have the Firebase configuration, and this configuration is for this particular project. So if you have your own project, then you might be having a different configuration. Only these values would be different, the keys would remain the same. And don't think to copy this project configuration from this tutorial, because by the time you will be watching this video, this project would already have been deleted. And then finally what we do, we call an app, and then we simply we create a variable called app, and then we simply initialize our app by passing in the Firebase configuration, that is this Firebase configuration. And now, since we are interested in using Firebase or Firebase Firestore for this tutorial, what I'm going to do, I'm going to import get Firestore from the Firestore package. So I'll say import something from Firebase /Firestore, like this. And what we want to import, we simply want to import get Firestore, that is get the Firestore database for this particular application or for this particular project that we created. And here at the very bottom, we'll simply say let me copy it from here, that is initialize Firestore, simply like this. And now what I'll do, I'll simply say const db equal to get Firestore, and this takes in only one parameter, and that is the Firebase application. That is this application that we just initialized. And since we want to use this DB in multiple parts of our application, what I'll do, I'll simply export this as a constant here. Not export, but export this as a constant. So now our Firebase initialization is complete. And now if we go back to our database once again, so let's go back to our database once again. So if we have a look at our Cloud Firestore, we have two collections, that is the movies and to-dos collection. But in this video, we'll be targeting the movies collection, and we'll be getting all the data that is present inside this movies collection. We would be doing all the CRUD things here, that is the create, read, update, and delete. But initially, I wanted to show you that is how to read data from this Firestore database. So let's target this movies collection here. So let's go back to our application. So here what I'll do, I'll create a new folder called components, in which I will be creating all the 4 or 5 components, that is read the database, to create a new object inside a database, and so on and so forth. So let me create a component here, or a components folder here, and here I'll be creating a new file called list movies.jsx. So you can use JS or JSX, whatever you like. I prefer to use JSX. So list movies.jsx, and here I would be simply using this snippet called RFC to export a default functional component here, that is list movies. And here inside this div, what I'll be doing is this, that I'll be creating an h1 here or an h4 here, which would simply say list movies, and I'll be including this component, that is list movies, inside our app.js file inside the main tags here. Though this video is not about the UI, I am simply focusing on the CRUD applications of Firestore, so I won't be doing anything about the UI. The UI would be plain simple HTML here. And here we'll be saying list movies like this, and this list movies has been automatically imported from this components folder. So as soon as I save this, we see that we have this component here, that is list movies. And now let's go back to our list movies, and inside this list movies we would be getting a list of our movies from the Firestore database. So here what I'll do, I'll create a state variable called use state, that is called movies, not use state, by using the use state hook here. And the initial movies would be an empty array, and here we need to import the user state hook from React. So let me import it from React. And now what do we need to do? We need to create a function here that is called get movie or get movies. So let's create a function called get movies like this. And inside this get movies, I need to reference this collection called movie. So to get a reference to the movies collection inside the Firestore database, what we'll need is the collection from Firestore, Firebase Firestore thing. So we'll say import something from Firebase /Firestore store like this, and here we need to reference the collection here like this. And now we have a collection method here, and we need to pass in something here to get the movies collection. Firstly, we need to pass in the Firestore database, that is the database we initialize inside the init firebase.js file. That is this thing here. So let me do it and it would make more sense. So to get the list, to get the movies here, firstly we need to say const movie collection ref would be equal to collection that is imported from Firebase Firestore, and here we need to pass in the DB that we created, that we exported from this init firebase.js file, that is this thing here. So since it's a constant export, so I have imported here, or it has been automatically imported from this file. And here we need to pass in the second argument also, and that would be the name of the collection, and in our case that would be the movies collection. And let's go back to our Firestore database here and make sure that this name matches this thing here, that is movies. So if we were using to-dos, then we would have been passing here to-dos and not movies, but we are references movies collection, so therefore we are passing here movies, simply like this. And now we have a reference of our collection here. And now to this collection, what we can do, we can use another method here from this package, that is Firebase Firestore, and that is get docs, not get doc, that is for an individual item, but here we need to use get docs here. And now what we can simply say, we can simply call this function, that is get docs, and here we need to pass in the movie collection ref. So we can say movie collection ref, and then it's a promise, so we can use the then and catch block. So then a response like this, let it be an empty array, empty thing for now, and then the catch block, so error like this. And if there is an error, we can simply console log the error here. So console.log error.message like this. And now inside this response, let me show you the response first, that is what is coming inside the response. So console.log response, it's simply like this. So let me save this. And when do we want to call this method here, that is get movies? So as soon as this component mounts, we want to call this function, that is get movies. So what I'll do, I'll simply use an hook here, that is use effect, by using the use effect snippet, and I want to run it on component mount. So the dependency would be an empty array, and here we need to also import use effect from React. So let me import it here from React. And now what we can simply say, we can simply call this method here, that is get movies, simply like this. So let's save this. So now since I saved this application and everything seems to be connected, so let me right click and click on inspect here. And if we open the console here, we see that we got something here. That is, we got the metadata, the query, the Firestore, and the snapshot here. So what are we interested in? We are interested in this snapshot thing, but how do we get that snapshot here? So that would be a piece of cake in this thing here. So what we can say, we can simply say const movies, or let's simply call it movies, MOVS, equal to result or response.docs, and response.docs would contain each and every document that is present inside the collection. So before doing anything here, what I'll do, I'll simply log in the docs here, because that is what we are interested in. That is in all the documents of that collection. So let me save this, and now we get something else here. And if we open it, we see that we have something here that is length is 1. And then we have this 0 item here that contains the individual document. And this won't make any sense to you until and unless we expand this object by using this thing here, that is the response.docs. We need to map this array into our own array. So what we can do, we can use the map method. So we can say const movies equal to response.docs.map, and here we have an individual document like this. And then what I can do, I can simply return something from here, and I want to return an object here that is the data of that document. So let me put that into the data field here. So that would be doc.data like this, and this is the function. So you need to call the data function here, and then we need to pass in something else here, and that is the ID of the document. Let me write it first, and then I'll explain it to you each and everything. So .doc ID. Let's save this. And now what I'm doing basically here, that is I am looping through each of the documents that is present inside this movies collection, and then I'm using the map method to get an individual document. And as you know that each of the document has an ID, that is this is a document, this is the document ID, and this thing here is the document data. So therefore I am mapping that document into a new array with the data and the ID also. So now what we can do, after getting this thing here that is movies, what we can do, we can simply set the movies inside the state variable, that is this state variable, and this movies is not this movies. So what I can do, I can simply rename this variable to make it more explicit. So let's call it movs. And now what I can do, I can simply set the state of this movies state variable using this movs thing. So I can say movs simply like this. And now our movies would be containing the new movies that is coming from the database. And now what I can do, I can use an ordered list or an unordered list here inside my HTML here. I can simply provide an unordered list. And before writing the list elements here, what I can do, I can use effect once more to show you that is what is contained inside this movies state variable as of now. So I can say use effect or use the use effect snippet. And here the dependency would be the movies state variable, and what I want to log, we simply want to log movies here, because this effect would run as soon as this movies state variable changes. So therefore I'm using this separate use effect hook for this movies thing here. So let me save this, and now we see, or let me close this thing here. Now we see that as soon as the component mounts, this effect ran, and initially our movies was an empty array that is defined by this state. And after a bit of time, when we call this get movies, as soon as the component mounts, we got back an array that is set, we got back some documents from the database, and then we set the movies from this new movie movs thing. So that's why this effect ran again, that is this use effect ran again. And now if we expand this, we see that we have the data here and the ID here, and this ID is same as this ID. Let me show it to you. That is, this is the ID here, and the data would be this data that contains the key and value pair, that is name Captain America, and that is what is present here. So what I can do, I can use this movies object or this movies state variable to list all the movies here inside this UL. So I can say movies.map, and here we have an individual movie. And then what do we want to do? We want to simply return an li tag here. So let me simply return an li element here. So let me do it this way. So li, and the key of this li element would be movie.id, because that is a unique identifier of this element. And then we can simply spit out the movie ID and movie name here. So we can simply say movie.data.name, simply like this. So let's save this, and now we see that we have Captain America. So now what I'll do, I'll go back, I'll make one more button here, and that would simply call this get movies function again. So let me create a button here, and it should simply say refresh movies. And later in the video, we'll be also seeing that is how to monitor real-time data changes inside the database using the snapshot listener. But for now, let's manually do it. So on click, what would happen? So on click, I simply want to call this function, that is get movies, simply like this. And now let's save this. So now let's go back to our Firestore database, and now let me try to add one more document here. Let's generate an auto ID for this. The field name would be name. The value would be Iron Man, and let's save it. So we see that another document has been added to this collection, Iron Man and Captain America. So now let's go back to our application, and now if I click on this refresh movies, then we would be getting another element here. So let's click on refresh movies. We see that this time we have Iron Man and Captain America. So till now, what we have done is this, that we know that how to get a list of all the documents inside a particular collections. So now what I'll do, I'll show you that how do we add a movie to this movies collection. So for that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create another component here, and that would be add movie. So let's click on new file. So let's create a new file here that would simply say add movie.jsx like this. Let me create a functional component here, add movie, and then I want to create an h1 here, that is add movie would be an h4 here, and then this would return a div like this, and this is only for notification purposes on this page here. And inside this add movie, I want to have a form. So let's create a form here. The action we are not interested in. We would be doing it manually. That is, we would be controlling the form manually. And then here I would like to have an input element. The type would be text. And then this should have a value. And this should be a controlled input. So we need to use a state variable here. So here we can simply say use a state. Name, set name, initial name would be an empty name. That is the name of the movie, and the value would be name. And this is old plain React stuff. This is nothing to do with Firestore database. And then we have the on change events, on change. We have the event, and then we can simply say we can simply say set name would be e.target.value, simply like this. Let's also give it a label here. So label. So for this thing, we need to provide an ID here. ID would be name, HTML for name, and here the label would be movie name, like this. And then inside this form, we would be also having a button that would be of type of submit. So submit like this, and here we can simply say add movie like this. So let's save this, and now we need to include this component, that is this add movie component, inside our app.js so that it is reflected here. So let's go to our app.js, and just below the list movies, I can add this component, that is add movie, and it is automatically imported from this components folder. So let's save this, and now we see that we have this add movie component here. Though this looks very ugly, but we are not interested in the beautification of this application. We are interested in the logic of this application. And now here what we need to do, we need to handle this form here. So what we can do, we can create a function here, that is function handle submit like this. And then we would be having an event here, and we can simply say e.prevent default. So prevent default like this. And then firstly we need to check, so if name equal to an empty string, then we simply want to return, that is we do not want to add in a document. Or otherwise, let me simply make an alert here, that is alert name like this. So let's save this, and inside this form, let's pass in this handle submit function. So on submit would be equal to handle submit like this. So let's save this and let's try it out. So let me simply press add movie. We cannot do it because that is an empty value. And if we simply say Black Widow like this, so let's click here, and now we see that we got this thing here, that is Black Widow. So let's try to add this Black Widow to our Firestore database. So the first thing we need to do, we need to get a reference of that collection. So again, we need to do this thing here, that is import collection from Firebase Firestore. And now here, what we need to do, we need to get a reference to that movies collection. So we can say const movies collection or collect ref equal to, not ref, but ref equal to collection. And then we need to pass in the database, and then we need to pass in movies here. Simply like this. And now this is giving an error because database is not imported from that thing here, that is from this file. So we see that we need to do this thing, that is this collection DB movies, a couple of times. So I'll tell you that is the shorter way of doing this stuff in a brief moment of time. But first, let me try to add this movie to this movies collection. And now we can use this add dot function here. That is a promise in itself. So add doc, and here we need to pass in the movie collection ref, and then the data which we want to put in there, put in that database or in that document. So here we can simply say name would be name like this. Or if you want to simplify it, you can simply pass in name here because the key and value names are same here. So simply like this. And then it's a promise. So we can again use then response. And here we can simply console.log the response. So console.log the response. And if there is an error, we can simply log in the error like this. So console.log error.message like this. And let me remove this alert statement from here. So if everything went well, this time, as soon as I click on add movie, we would be adding this movie to our Firestore collection. So let's go back to our Firestore collection once, and we see that we do not have any document related to Black Widow. So Iron Man and Captain America are only here. So let's click on add movie. And if we go back to our Firestore database, we see that we got a green flash here. If you just pause the video briefly, so we see that this time we added this Black Widow here inside this collection. So this is how easy it is to add data to your Firestore collection. And if we right click and inspect, we can see the response, that is this response here. And this response is something which you might not understand, but what we can do, we can simply log in the ID here. So if I do ref.response.id, so basically it would return us the ID of the document that is inserted inside the database. So let me minimize this thing here. And this time, let me add in Dr. Strange. Not Strange, but Strange. Let's click on add movie. And we see that this time we got this thing here. And again, we see that we do not have an ID here. Okay, so the thing was that I did not save this file here. I simply mentioned it here, but I did not save the file. So that was that's the reason I was getting this zoo thing here. But now, as soon as I saved this application and I tried this to add this movie a couple of more times, we see that we got these two document IDs here, which you can get from this response.id. So now we know that how do we add a movie here. And if we do refresh here, we would be seeing a couple of Doctor Strange here because that was my trial period here. So let's refresh it. And now we see that we got Doctor Strange a couple of times here. And now what I'll do, I'll simply show you that is how do you edit a movie. So that would be pretty simple. And to edit a movie, what I'll do, I'll simply inside this list of movies, I'll simply add in the ID of the movie also beside this list element. So let's go to this list movies here, and inside this li tag, what I'll do, I'll simply spit out the movie ID also so that we can get hold of the movie ID itself. So let's click here, and now we see that we have the ID of the movie as well here. Like this, that is the individual IDs of the movie. And now let's simply go to this components folder, and let me create a new folder file here. That would be let me do it this way. So edit movie.jsx like this. And before going to edit movie.jsx, I wanted to show you one more thing. That is how do we make a singleton of this thing here, that is collection db movies, because this is one thing which is used in almost each and every component where you want to reference this movies collection. So for that, what you can do, you can create a new file inside your lib folder. Let me create a new file called firestore.collections.js, like this, not JSX but JS. And here what I'll do, I'll import something from Firestore. So import Firebase / Firestore, like this. And what we want to import, we want to import collection here from this thing. And now what we want to simply export here, so export const movie collection ref would be equal to collection, and then we can pass in the db here from the init Firebase thing, and then we can simply pass in movies here, not movies but movies here, like this. So let's save this, and now we can use this movie collection ref in each of the components in which we want to use this movies collection, and then we do not have to import this collection in each and every file. So let's copy this movie collection ref and let's go to this add movie.jsx, and again this db is coming from this init firebase.js file. So now we have a single source of truth for our collection here. So let's go to the list movies here, and instead of doing this thing here, what I can do, I can simply say movie collection ref, that is this thing is imported from this file, that is movies firestore.collections. And everything would work the same way as it was previously working. So let's again copy it and let's go to the add movie thing, and again let's remove this collection thing from here, and let me paste it here, and let's simply import that thing from the Firebase collections here. And now you might relieve yourself from making typo errors inside this movies collection name. So now let's go to the edit movie thing here. Let me paste in a RFC snippet to create an functional component. Let me copy almost each and everything from this add movie component because that would be almost similar. So let's copy each and everything, and let's go to this edit thing, and let me paste everything here. So now we need to import the user state hook, and now we need to create one more state variable. So let's use the user state snippet, and that would be the ID of the movie, set ID. Initially it would be an empty string, and then here we need to, I'll come to this handle submit after we create the form here. So this input field would remain the same, and this would say edit movie, and to pass in the ID of the movie to be edited, you can use your ninja techniques to click on something, and then you can simply open the edit form, and then you can have a hidden field for the input. But since I want to keep it simple, or I want to make it explicit, so I would be copying and pasting the ID of the movies from here inside the edit form also. So here let me create one more label and input field in the same way, and this time the HTML4 would be ID, and this would be the movie ID to be edited. The ID would be ID, and the type would be text. The value would be ID coming from the state variable, and the set name, instead of set name, it would be set ID, like this. As simple as that. And now we can simply say update movie, like this. So let's save this, and now we need to import this component inside our app.js file. So let me simply import it here. So edit movie, like this. So let's save this, and now we have some errors here, and that is because we have this add doc is not present. So let's go here, and now let's try to handle the submit function here. So let me comment it out from here, or let me delete it from here because that is not required here. That is the add doc function. So now we see that this is a pretty ugly looking form. So let me put a break statement here to make it look prettier. So to update a movie, we need to pass in the movie ID as well as the new name of the movie. So here we want to return from this handle submit function if there is no ID specified here. So if there is no ID or if there is no name, then we want to return from this handle submit function. So the first thing to edit this movie or to update this movie, what we need to do, we need to get a reference to a particular document which you want to update. So if we want to update this document, that is this doctor strange, we want to get a reference to this document with this ID. So how do we do that? It is pretty simple to do. So firstly, we need to import something from Firebase Firestore package. So import something from Firebase / Firestore. And here we need to get a reference to the document. So we can simply extract doc from here. And now we can get a docref from this doc function here. So we can say docref equal to doc like this. And then we need to pass in the database. And that comes from the Firebase package, or not the Firebase package, but the initialized Firebase project, that is this DB. So we pass in the DB here inside this thing here, and then we need to pass in the collection in which that document exists. So in our case, it was the movies collection, and then finally we need to pass in the ID of that document like this. So now we have a reference to that particular document with that ID. And now what we can do, we can again use one more function from here, from this Firestore package, and that is update doc like this to update a document. And here we can simply say update doc, and here we need to pass in the docref. So docref we just created on this line number 14, and then we need to pass in the updates here, and the updates would be name, simply like this. And here I could have done it like this, name, but since both the things are same, that is the key and value are same, so I can simply pass a name here. And since it's a promise, so again we can use then and catch. So then response. So console.log response. I don't know what is coming here inside this response. So let's simply log it the response here dot catch error and console.log the error. So console.log error dot message, simply like this. So let's save it, and now let's try to edit this movie, that is with this ID, because we have a couple of Doctor Stranges here. So let's copy this ID, let's paste the movie ID, let's paste in the, or let's put in the updated name for this ID. So let's put here Hulk like this, and let's click on update movie. So nothing happened here, but if we try to have a look at this document that starts with XAG, and let's go to our database here. And if we have a look at this document here, we see that this time the name of the movie is Hulk, and we see that the document has already been updated. So if we click here refresh movies, then we can see that this ID has been updated, and we see that we got Hulk here. So this is how easy it was to update the data inside your Firestore database. And if we simply inspect it, and we see that inside the edit movie on line number 17, there is no response coming here, which means that the promise, it would be a void type. Okay, so one more thing here is this, that if you provide in an ID which does not exist, so this says that if the document referred by a particular document reference ID is not does not exist, the update would simply fail. So let's try to do that as well. Let's see it in the console, that what error do we get here. So let's try to do that. So let me pass in an ID which does not exist, and let me try to update that movie. So if we try to update that movie, so we see that we get an error here, that is from line number 18 here. That is no document to update. So which makes us sure that only the specific IDs present inside the specific collection would only be updated. And there is one more thing apart from this update doc that can be used to update a document, and that is the set doc. So basically what update does is that it only updates the specific fields from the collection, whereas set would simply update all the fields from the collection, from the particular document. That is, let me explain. Let me use that as well. So this time I would use set doc instead of this update doc. So let me copy this piece of code from here, and let me paste it here, and let me comment it out from here. And instead of updating doc, I would be using set doc, and we would be passing in the same doc ref. And this time inside the object, let me simply pass in age here, and let's the age be 26. And watch what would happen if we use the set doc method. It would completely remove the previous document, and it would simply create a new document with this field here, that is age 26. So let's save this, and let me copy this Hulk from here, and let me paste it here, and let me paste in this a movie name Hulk, or let it be like Mafia. Let's click on update the movie. We see that nothing happened here, but this time the movie name would be gone from here. So we see that the movie name is gone from here, and that is because the set doc method completely updates the whole document. It does not keeps in the name field here, whereas update would have kept the name field here. So as we can see, that is inside this document, that is with this ID, we have a field called age. And this time again, what I'm going to use the update doc method by passing in the name value, so that we can see that if we use the update doc method, then only the changed fields are updated, whereas in the set doc, whole of the document is overwritten. So let's see that in action. So let's comment the set doc again from here, and let's again use the update doc thing from here, and let's save it always. And this time let me provide in Mafia here, and let me click on update movie. And if we go back to our database, we see that the update doc method keeps the previous field, that is age, which is not updated, and it also adds in the name field here. So it depends on your application, that is which thing you want to use, but I would prefer that is this thing is destructive, that is set doc is destructive, whereas update doc is much more safer than set doc. So it depends on you that what you want to use, but I prefer to use update doc. So now let's see that how do we delete a movie from our database. Now to delete a movie from the database, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to this list movies collection here, and here inside the map method, where I am mapping all the movies, that is this movies, I want to put in a delete button here. I simply put in a button here, so it would be an ugly looking button again. So button, so delete, or let me put an emoji here if I can get one. So trash. And here we would be having an on click event on this thing here, and here I would like to call a function called delete movie, like this, and here I would like to pass in the movie ID. So I can say delete movie.id, and now I like to create this function, that is delete movie, somewhere here inside this component. So I'll say function delete movie, and here it takes in an ID here, and here if everything went well, we can see that. So let's simply make an alert here, alert ID. So let's save that, and we have this button here with the trash icon here. So if I click here, so we see the ID is passed here, and if I click here, we see the ID is passed here. So now we know that this function is working. So now again, to delete a movie, what we want to do, we need to get a reference to a particular document to be deleted. So again, we can use the same thing, that is const docref would be equal to doc, that is coming from Firestore. That is, let me minimize this get movies and this use effects here. So we got the doc from Firebase Firestore. And now what I need to do, we need to pass in the database here. That is the database which we have initialized. And then we need to pass in the collection name. So in our case, it would be the movies collection. And then we need to pass in the ID of the reference document. So we can simply pass an ID here, that is coming here as a parameter. And this should be docref, like this. And instead of making an alert, what I can do, I can simply say delete, or let me import it first. So now what, to delete a document, I can simply get one more function from here, or one more method from this Firestore package, and that is delete doc, like this. So let's use this delete doc method. So delete doc, and here we need to pass in the reference, and again it's a promise which returns us nothing. So and here we need to pass in the document reference, and that would be docref, and dot then. And here we have a void here, because there is nothing returned here. I can simply log here, that is console.log document deleted, like this, and then we can catch the particular error if there is any. So I can simply say error, so console.log, error.message, in case the document is not found by this ID. So let's save this, and let's click on refresh movies. So let's click on delete this Doctor Strange movie, which starts with DASC. So let's click on delete, And let's click on refresh movies once again, and we see that that document is deleted. And if we have a look here, we see that that document also does not exist. So let's also try to delete this document, that is XAQ, or the name and age field here. So let's click delete on this thing here, and if we go here, we see that that document is now does not exist anymore. So now we can also add in a movie here. And now the best part of this application comes, and that is get real-time updates from the Firestore collection as soon as they happen. So to do that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create one more collection here, or one more component here, not the collection here, and that would be called real-time movies, real-time list.jsx. So real-time movies.jsx. Again, I would be using the snippet called RFC, and again let me put an H4 again here. So H4 like this. And now what I need to do, I need to get a reference to that movies collection. So I can simply have a state variable here that would be the data and the set data, or the movies and the set movies. So I can use the user state snippet here, would be movies, set movies, and initial state would be an empty array. So now let me import user state from React, and I would also want to use the use effect snippet because I want to start listening for the movies as soon as the component mounts. So I'm using the use effect snippet here, and here I would need to return something, but this effect should run only on component mount and on dismount. That is, this return would be called on dismount or unmount, not dismount but unmount. So we imported the use effect hook also. So now the first thing we need to do, we need to call one function, that is on snapshot function, from this Firestore package. So let me import something from Firebase Firestore like this, and here we have a function or a method called on snapshot like this. And now we can call that function, that is on snapshot, and here we need to pass in a couple of things, that is the reference and the observer. So the reference would be the movie collection ref that we created initially inside the Firestore collection, because otherwise we need to import the collection thing from here, and then we need to create use this thing here. So why not simply use this movie collection ref? So let's go to this real-time movies here, and here we can simply pass in the movie collection ref, and again this movie collection ref is imported from our file, that is firestore.collections thing here. And then we have an observer here that would be simply called a snapshot, or I'm simply going to call it snapshot like this. And then this function, that is on snapshot, returns us an unsubscribe function that we can call inside the component did unmount method, because otherwise if you did not call that unsubscribe function, then multiple snapshot observers would be added to your application, and you might get updates a couple of times or a couple of more times. So it would be it's always advisable to simply call the unsubscribe function that is returned from this on snapshot on component did unmount. So I can say const unsubscribe equal to this thing, and then it should be called unsubscribe like this, and then we can simply execute this function on component did unmount. So here what we can do, we can simply set the movies from this snapshot. So again, I can simply call it set movies, and now this thing is pretty similar as the list movies thing. So I am directly using it here. So snapshot dot data, sorry, not the data, but the snapshot dot docs dot map, and here we can pass in the, we can track in the individual document, and simply we want to return the data like this, that is, we want to do it like this. So firstly we need to return the ID, so we can say doc.id like this, and the data would be doc.data like this. So let me increase the size here, and we need to execute this data thing here because this data is a function here. So let's save this, and that's all what you need to do to listen for real-time updates. So let me simply grab in the list item from this list movies thing here. So let me simply copy this URL from here, and let me paste it there inside my real-time movies, because that is the same thing which we initially did. And I want to remove this delete movie thing here, because that is already handled inside this list movies. So let's save this, and I think that everything seems to be fine here. And now let's go to our app.js file and let's include this component there. So let's go to our app.js file and let me comment out this list movies from here, and let me add in the real-time movies like this. So let's save this, and we see that we have our real-time movies displayed here. And let me try to add in one more movie here, and this would be like let's say Thor. Let's try to add it. We see that as soon as we added it, it is automatically reflected here. So let's copy this ID and let's change the name to something else. So let's call it Thor Ragnarok, though I did not like the movie. So as soon as I update the movie, the real-time changes would be applied here. So let's click on update movie. We see that the document has been updated here, and let's also verify it inside our Firebase console. That start with KH81. So let's go here. So KH81, we see that we have Thor Ragnarok. So this is how easy it is to work with Firestore database using React application. So guys, that's all about this video, and I think that I've covered each and every topic, that is the create, read, update and delete, and also the real-time changes. And now the last thing, and that is the security rules for this Firestore package. So if we have a look here, we have these rules here, and if I wanted to explain the rules here, it would be too difficult to include that in this video itself, because that's a separate video about rules. And if you want, you can go and watch my video that is linked above. That is made for Android Firestore, but the same rules work for this React Firestore also, because Firestore is a service that is provided by Firebase, and that can be used inside any of the front-end client applications like the Android, the iOS, or the React applications, or Vue, Angular, or whatever web applications in short. So you can go and watch that video, and in that video I've explained in detail about Firestore rules, and I guess that video is a super hit video about Firestore rules, and I can guarantee you that you cannot even find the same kind of explanation about Firestore rules on the Firebase web page itself, or the Firebase documentation. So I would highly recommend you to go and watch that video that is about the Firestore security rules. So guys, that's all about this video. So if you have liked the video, do hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, do subscribe to the channel. So thank you, bye bye, take care, and have a good day and have a great day.